So I think just coming down here, I think it made it easier to make that transition. But again, so up there I was going to this thing called moderation management. Like I was trying that hard to moderate the drinking.
Yeah,
like,
that's good.
Only like keeping it, but it's crazy to even do that. I'm glad now that I found an alternative.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, because there's a lot of people, there's shaming and there's that very strange thing. When I first started, I stopped drinking maybe 6 years ago.
Okay.
And when I started, and I didn't have to, I had an issue, my medical health wasn't very good at the time and I was suffering with depression, and it took on a whole nother level for me, and so it affected all of my organs. And one of the organs that was affected was my liver. And as a result of that, I had cirrhosis of the liver, and so they told me I had to, because all of my organs, it's a longer story, but all of them were suffering. And so as a result of that, they told me I had no choice. But then when everything fixed itself and everything's healthy now, I had the option, I could. I just never started again, and that was a choice. Now, when I started to tell people that that was my choice, I was afraid in the beginning that people were going to be like, oh, they weren't going to want to hang out with me, or like they were going to give me a hard time. And then I really have to be honest, in Florida, I haven't had any issues with that. No one has made me feel funny about it.
That's good.
It's actually been okay, and then this helps too, because it's a little bit of a trick, it tricks them a little bit. They think that you're also drinking with
Sure.
them. Yeah.
And also, you're being so much safer. Like you're.
I can drive anywhere I want.
You can drive.
I don't even think about it. It's so nice.
You live where I live. We were just talking about this in West Palm Beach. So, 20 years ago I lived, in City Place, but I was drinking and doing drugs back then. I'm lucky to be alive, because it's just not how it's different.
It's great. I remember everything. I wake up fresh the next morning, like we were saying before. I can drive, and I still have fun.
Yeah.
I still do. So it's
100%. I mean, and for me, honestly, when I would drink, I would always get to that point. Like, I would be like, oh no, I'm just going to have 2 tonight. But once I had 4, there was really no turning back. I was probably going to have 8, and I was probably going to shut down bars on my way home.
Yeah, exactly.
I was that gross.
Yeah, I was there too. I had my good times.
Because I had my own business and I ran it from home, so I could sleep in.
That's true.
Charles would leave at 7, and I'm like, later, have fun with that.
But you know what? We're entrepreneurs now. We represent brands.
Right.
People count on us. You got to be at the top of your game now.
Oh yeah, no,
that's exactly right.
I mean, Danny and I both. Well, Danny's stepfather, and I have children. So
Yeah.
Dylan, and so
Right.
that changes it. But for me, it's when I stopped drinking, it was really with him, and I realized happy hour is just going to mean something different now. I'm going to just be with him, and I do consume the THC, but it's kind of fun because then I'm with him and I'm just so present. And I'm
You're so present.
Going, and I could be a kid.
And it's interesting.
Or whatever.
I find it interesting because I actually found it, I took it on as something different. When I started exploring happy hours as someone who didn't drink alcohol, I was always excited about the happy hour specials, because I started wondering about all the different restaurants in our area. Yes. They all do something different for happy hour. So I went on a kind of a little bit of a spiel where I was going from restaurant to restaurant, trying out their happy hours. Some of them started at 4, some of them started a little bit later. How do they do happy hour?
Yeah.
It became more of a fascination for me than it was for really about the drinks, because I was more focused on how they ran their happy hour food, and there's some food selection and what they did, and it's interesting actually.
So tell me Kelly and I know each other well.
Right.
We know where we got our start, what we do. Tell me about what you do, what you're doing in South Florida, and what your kind of long-term goals are.
Sure. So I've been coming to here my whole life. My grandparents lived on Palm Beach Island, and so I was familiar with Palm Beach, and it's the only place that stood still in my whole life. I moved all over. I'm originally from New York City, and I knew I would eventually come back here. I was very close to my grandmother, and she passed away. So when I went through a tough marriage, and it was we went through a very tough time, and we moved down. We ended up moving down here together because we were kicked off the property that we were living on because of domestic violence and other things that were going on. So we moved here, and at that point, I was heavily in depression. My depression had been going on for maybe about 1.5 years, 2 years at that point, and it took on a whole life of its own when we moved here. And I'm glad we were living here in South Florida, because my mother lives nearby, and also I was able to get the help that I needed. So I spent basically 3 years living in and out of hospitals dealing with my depression, because my depression led to, and this is it's a long journey, but on a basic level is that I went from feeling depressed as someone would normally feel or consider normal, and it took over me. It took over me. I had no interest in anything. I wasn't social. I wasn't talking. I wasn't showering, like you were saying. I wasn't. So what happened was this: all of my organs started failing, and once my organs started failing, because I wasn't taking care of my health, I wasn't eating properly, I wasn't doing anything, that I stopped driving, and I love to drive. I lost my vision. Like my vision was, I couldn't drive, and all my organs were failing, all of them. And so they hospitalized me, and part of it was that I developed peripheral neuropathy in both my legs. So I have chronic severe peripheral neuropathy in both my legs. It goes from my hip all the way to my toes. Today, because I'm perfectly healthy, because I eat well, because of everything else, you would never know that I had this. But at the time, it put me in a wheelchair.
Wow.
I was in a wheelchair for a year.
How long ago?
I've lived in West Palm now for 4 years now. So I moved here from a hospital in Denver. So 4 years ago was when I finished my treatments. My treatments.
That was COVID.
Right. So it was right before COVID, and prior to that, in 2019, I was in a wheelchair. I couldn't, because what happened was that people don't really know much about peripheral neuropathy. It's a secondary disease. And down the road, when I'm able to, I am going to create a nonprofit for this, because people need to learn about this disease. They do need to know about it, because it's debilitating, but no one really talks about it because it's considered second.
Right.
But it took over my life. I couldn't walk anymore because my legs were collapsing. I was getting nerve pain all the way through, and I couldn't feel my legs. And that's why I was in the wheelchair. So, and it was caused by different things, vitamin deficiency. It's caused by, some people have it as a side effect from chemo. It affects a lot of people, and they don't really talk about it. So, something that people need to educate on. So when it happened to me, I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know, and it came from the depression and everything else. So I was like, "What's happening? I can't take Tylenol. I can't take Advil. Nerve pain is not. It doesn't work. None of that stuff works on nerve pain." So it was a shocking thing for me, and I went through this horrible time in my life. But fast forward, the good news is that I made a miraculous recovery, and that's what brought me here today. And that's what has been able for me to recreate myself here in Florida. And so I discovered during this time that I was a writer. So I've been writing really more freelance and things like that, writing for myself. And I started writing a book. And then when I moved to Florida, I actually met, I met the head of Supercar Week, and I started exploring, because I wasn't sure exactly what direction my career was going to go. COVID hit, I became an accidental model. I reinvented myself because I needed to pay my bills. And I've always had a love for fashion. But in terms of my interests, I do love doing events. I like the writing piece of it. And the PR was it was basically where I was going to end up in that direction. I think with the marketing and the PR and the social media and everything else, it was going to kind of come into that direction. So it did.
Yeah.
Supercar Week, I narrowed it down, and I became the director of PR for them. And I was working with them for like 3 years, and then last year I went off on my own to start my own company, and they needed some extra help this year, so I came back. But that's how I started honing in on the PR part.
Oh, that's great.
So right now I'm in the middle of developing my company, developing my reach, and networking, and I also do have a big piece of me likes to give back because of what I went through. I do everything I can to be involved in the community as I can. I ran for Woman of the Year for LLS, and I won.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I actually came in second place, but the woman who beat me, this is funny, I didn't have a team. Like everyone has like a team. I didn't know this going into it. I just ran for it because I wanted to raise money, because my aunt had passed away, and I also think that people need to do more research in medical research because of neuropathy, And I didn't have a team, and I was a one-woman show, and I came in like runner-up, which was big because the woman ahead of me who won, she came in at $450,000 she made in one event in PGA, and I came in second.
Wow.
So I thought to myself, you know what, I will take it. I was really proud. I was, and so I did that.
That's a win.
Yeah, it was a win. So right now I try to combine both of my passions, the philanthropy with the PR, and that's what I've been doing right now. So just really building my business. It's the early stages, but
That's great.
Yeah.
You guys make a good team.
Thank you. Yeah.
Exactly. I know, because I'm kind of, getting away a little bit from the luxury lifestyle PR, getting back more into travel, PR.
The travel's great, yeah.
And then doing things with Dylan, like around Palm Beach County, because, I was blessed to grow up really in many different places. I mean, I lived in Orange County, California for a long time.
Right.
I saw that coming up. Like I lived there in the 90s, and I was in that all the surfer culture and modeling for Roxy, and it was really intimidating intimidating. And so it's really nice to be here and having Dylan getting into that scene in South Florida and helping him and kind of steering the way. But then also, I think it's a great melting pot here of people from New York and from California now. Since COVID, we've gotten a lot of people from. And the reason I never stayed in California is because I really didn't want to do entertainment PR. You know, that was in the early 2000s, and like Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie had their reality shows, and I was like, I could not do